Hi guys, welcome back to Coco 3D. In this video, we will implement the Firebase Realtime Database. So let's get started. Now in our game, we use player prefs to store users' data. For example, their name, total coins, current level, or maybe the high score. But there is a downside of using player pref, which is the data that we store using the player prefs can easily be erased by simply going into the app setting and clearing the data. This will remove all the player prefs data, that means all the user progress will be erased. Now, we definitely don't want this to happen, so that's where the Firebase Realtime Database comes in. By using Firebase Realtime Database, we can store all the users' data into the Firebase server and we can fetch the data whenever needed. Now we have to first use the authentication in order to use the Firebase Realtime Database, because by using authentication, we will get a unique user ID for all the players. And by using that user ID, Firebase can differentiate that this data belongs to this player and not the other one. Now for the authentication, you can watch my previous video. The link is in the description. And now let's open the Firebase dashboard and create our first database. Now I have already created the Firebase dashboard in the first video of this playlist. So if you want to see the setup, you can check out that video. The link to that video is in the description. But for now, click on Build Real-Time Database. Now click on Create Database. Choose your preferred location. I will choose the Asia. Now click on Next. Now leave this option as it is in the lock mode and click Enable. So here we have our first database, which is empty right now. So now first click on Rules and make the read and write to true. Then publish these changes and we can dismiss this. Now let's open Unity and start the implementation. So in here I have a very simple scene with main camera and directional light. So the first step is to import the Firebase Realtime Database package. So this is the package that we want to import, Firebase Database. If you want to download these packages, I will leave a link in the description. But for now, let's simply import it and click on Import. Make sure that you have entered the key store password, as sometimes it auto-resolves the dependencies. Okay, so now let's create a game object that will handle all the database work. Okay, so let's wait for this to finish. Okay, so now let's create a script and name it as data saver. Now let's attach this script and let's start some coding. So first let's add some using statements using system and using firebase.database. Let's remove this start and update. And now let's create a class that will have all the variables that we want to store inside the real-time database. The name of the class would be data2save. And let's create some variables inside it. First would be for the username. So public string username, public int total coins, public int current level, and public int high score. And we can add more variables if needed, but for now this will be enough. Now let's create an object for this class and a string for user ID. And let's also create an object for database reference, dbref. Now inside the awake, let's take its reference like this. Now other than that, we need only two functions. First will be public void save data function to save the data into the Firebase server. And second, public void load data function to load that data back into the game. So first let's work on the save data function. So here, first we will convert the class into its equivalent JSON format. So let's write string JSON equals to JSON utility dot toJSON and pass in the object. Now we have to save this data into the server, and for that we have to write dbref.child users.child user ID dot set raw JSON value async and pass in the JSON data. And that's it. By using these two lines, we will save all the data that is described inside our class into the Firebase database. So now let's first test this thing. Now in the inspector, let's fill in some dummy data. For the user ID, I will write the user 001. Then for the name, let's enter tester01. Total coins 98. Current level, let's enter 21. And for the high score, let's enter something like 40,000. And now let's create two buttons to call the save and load function. And now let's play the game and check that it is working or not. So now we got an error and it is saying that the database URL is missing. So let me check my JSON file, and I think we have to re-download our file from the Firebase server. So let's quickly do that. And yeah, Firebase URL is here in this new file. So let's replace it with the old one. So let's delete these files and let's import the new one. Okay, now let's play one more time and let's check that it is working or not. So this time it didn't give us any error. So let's press save data. And I think that the data is now saved in the Firebase server. So let's open the Firebase dashboard and let's check our data. Now in the dashboard, let's open real-time database, and inside the users, we got our data. So here we have our all values that we just sent from the Unity. So yeah, saving the data is working fine. And now let's try to load this data back into the game. So now let me remove all these values, as now we have to load all these data from the server. Now let's open script, and inside the load data function, we have to create an IEnumerator. Because loading the data from the server can take some time, so that's why we have to create an IEnumerator. So let me quickly do that. IEnumerator load data enum, and let's simply call it from the load data function. Now inside this IEnumerator, we have to write where server data equals to dbRef.childUsers.childUserID.getValueAsync. And now we have to wait for this request to finish. So we have to write yield return new, wait until predicate, and we have to wait until the server data dot is completed. Now after these two lines, we can print that the process is now completed. But we have to still check that we find some data or not. So for that, we have to write data snapshot equals to server data dot result, and then we have to convert it into a JSON. So write string JSON data equals to snapshot dot get raw JSON values. Now we got everything inside this string JSON data, and we just have to check that this string is empty or not. So if this JSON data is not equal to null, we can print that the server data is found, or else we can print that no data found. It can happen when you try to find a user whose data has not yet saved. And now inside the server data found, we can simply fill all the JSON data inside our class by simply writing dts equals to JSON utility dot from JSON, then pass in the class name, and then inside the bracket pass in the JSON data. And now let's check that this code works or not. So let's save the script, and as all the fields right now is empty, so let's play the game and let's press load data. And as you can see, we got all the data that we saved inside our server. So our load data function is working fine. And now let's try to change the user ID of the player from user 001 to user 002. And let's play the game one more time. And let's try to load the data. And as you can see, no data found, which is correct because we do not have any user in our server whose ID is user 002. And with that, our saving and loading data is working perfectly, and you can add more data to your class according to your needs. But for now, that's it for this video. The Firebase Realtime Database is working fine. We save some data and then we load some data back into the game. Now I will see you in the next video with some other Firebase topics. But till then, do like the video and subscribe to Coco3D. Bye!